Welcome to Of Knights and Pilgrims, a podcast about Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. I'm Christian Leithart.
I'm David Grubbs.
I have no idea what episode number this is, but we're discussing Book 1, Canto 4. As always, we recommend that you read the Canto first or listen to it. We never tire of recommending Thomas Copeland's LibriVox recording, which is also on YouTube. And, of course, the reading along is helpful, listening is helpful. We would just say, however you get the story into you, that's all you need. We're discussing...
I think this is episode 6.
Is it?
Didn't we do 2 episodes as introduction?
We did 2 introductory ones, and we're on Canto 4, so this must be 6.
Yeah.
So episode 6.
Math.
I should start keeping track, probably. So we're in Canto 4. Canto 3 was focused on Una's adventures while the Red Cross Knight was absent, and now we go back to the Red Cross Knight who is with Duessa, the false woman, double-natured woman, who proves herself even more false in this canto. She just never stops. And they're heading to the House of Pride. Now, in Book 1, this is our first of 2 contrasting houses, the House of Pride and the House of, is it Contemplation? House of Holiness, the House of Holiness, which, I mean, there's so many direct contrasts there. And you had mentioned there's like these sort of locations, significant locations in each of the books. So in Book 2, you have the Bower of Bliss, and what's the other one?
Well, there's a couple of other ones in Book 2. One of them is the House of Medina is her name, and she has 2 sisters. Medina represents moderation, the middle, and then she has 2 sisters who are the extreme and the deficiency. So the Knight of Temperance, of course, I think if I remember rightly, Medina is the romantic interest of the knight in that one.
Yeah.
There's another house very similar to it, which is a symbolic representation of the human body when it is rightly ordered.
Yeah.
In particular, when the passions and the reason are rightly aligned.
Yeah.
And so both of those are in contrast to the Bower of Bliss, which represents both a breaking of the principle of the mean, but also a disruption of the harmony that ought to exist within the internal order of a human, both the violation of the mean in principle and the violation of the mean in practice. And both of those, the Bower of Bliss jacks up. Yeah, there's a few different ones. Book 3 has Buzerain's court, kind of a court of false love, and then that is contrasted with, though I think, if I remember right, we may not find out about it until, do we find out about it in Book 3? Or maybe not till Book 4. There's another knight named Scudamore who tells about how he finds his lady love in I think it's the Garden of Venus. I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember the name precisely. Anyway,
I guess we'll just tackle those when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get.
So
we'll
in
get
this
to
one,
it.
this is our first House of Pride.
Yeah.
The first one. Duessa takes him there, and I love this canto. There's a few cantos that I like more than others. Gotta love Canto 1. You get to introduce, you get to meet the knight and Una. You get Error, who's a fun monster. I gotta say, Canto 9 is, as David has heard me talk about quite a lot. That one I really like. But this one's just so fun. Like, it would be such a good comic strip or something, because the imagery is so in your face.
Yeah.
It's very much a pageant. We talked a little bit about how there's these images, sort of like almost tapestries or stained glass windows or paintings that Spenser likes to put in front of you for you to examine. And This is one of those that's just so a parade of people coming by you.
A tableau.
So at the very beginning in the first stanza, the word ensample jumped out to me, or example, where the poet says, unto night there is no greater shame than lightness and inconstancy in love. That doth this Red Cross Knight's example plainly prove. And we talked about the educational side of the book and how Red Cross, there's a lot of things the Faerie Queene is, and in some ways it's a cautionary tale, like the early books of Proverbs, the early chapters of Proverbs, where here's a character who has gone after the wrong woman. He's fallen into folly and error, And look, bad things are going to happen to him. You do not want to be like this guy. And we'll see that here, and we'll see it in other places. And he does finally learn his lesson. It's not one of those stories that just ends with him. It's not an Aesop's fable where he's just going to die, and that's the end of his character.
I think that's a really apt way to frame this particular canto. Some cantos and some books indeed directly address the Queen Elizabeth. Some address a less fully specified reader. Some are aimed. Sometimes he'll reference ladies, but in this one, it's young knight. It's very much that proverbial, my son, listen to this. So, young knight, beware of fraud, beware of fickleness in choice and change of your dear loved dame.
Now that we brought it up, like the book of Proverbs is all through this canto because you have all these different sins represented, and they're not just the sin, but the result of the sin. What does it look like when you completely give yourself over to this sin? And it looks horrible, as we'll see. But as far as the house, so we know from the argument, the quatrain at the very beginning, that this is the house of pride. No surprises there. In stanza 2, we see that the way there is broad, and many, many people have gone there. It's just the classic, like Bunyan. Yep. We got this big old path headed right towards Vanity Fair. You don't have to find it. You don't have to seek it out. You're not struggling to get through the tiny gate. It's huge. Lots of people coming. They say a few people are coming out, and they all look really horrible. You've got lepers and beggars, and in the next few stanzas, we get a description of how it's built, and it always has reminded me of a film set where it looks so shiny and glitzy from the front, and you walk around to the back, and it's just plywood and like a few struts to hold it up. The stones are laid without mortar. They're going to fall down. It's literally built on a hill of sand. Yeah, it's paper thin. I was really curious if you had any thoughts about the dial on the top. If I were writing this, I would have said there was no clock. There was no sundial, because it's a place where you can just ignore the passing of time and pretend that your sins are never going to catch up with you. And I thought it was interesting. Why is there it says a dial told the timely hours?
Well, it signals that this is a temporal place. This is a place that will not last. It is bound by time.
It's not an eternal place.
Yeah, it's not an eternal place. It's, there's a dial at the top telling the timely hours, but it could just as easily have been a massive hourglass.
Right.
The sand is running out.
Right. That would make more sense. And maybe there's something there with the sand, the hill, the sand that's constantly crumbling.
Yep. That's a goodly heap for to behold. I mean, it looks good.
I like the for on a sandy hill that still did flit and fall away. You can see that sand just sort of doing the sand thing where a little bit falls out of time. They come to the gate, and the porter welcomes them. His name is Malvenu, or bad welcome, I'm guessing. And it says he denies entrance to no one. He's not really a guardsman. And here's where it came. We've talked about in a previous episode, the court of Elizabeth and the brightness and pageantry of the court. And this is all over the beginning of this description of the court. People clustered around trying to get close to the queen to gain her favor. She's described as a maiden queen that shone as Titan's ray. The reputation is that this whole book is just a big way for Spenser to ingratiate himself with Queen Elizabeth. And if that's all it is, this was really a misfire, this canto.
Yeah.
There's certainly some critique here of the royal court.
The funny thing is how the ways that critique of the royal court is often even built into the royal court. I'm sure you and many of our listeners have read some of the essays of Francis Bacon. In those essays, some of them talk about the kind of pomp that is appropriate for a royal court. And he decries vain show, but also says it's fitting for the royal court to be grand.
Yeah.
And which is it, my guy?
Well, it goes back to what we talked about in the previous episode about Canto 3. The critique is of robbing the alms and the church, the things that the expensive things that the church owns should be given to the poor or held for their own sake, not be stolen and used as private wealth. So it's maybe a similar thing. It's not that the riches are wrong; it's the use of the riches or how they're held.
And that beauty ought to be tied to truth. I mean, what makes the beauty of the House of Pride wrong is that it is not tied to truth. It's all an illusion. It's your comparison to a movie set.
Yeah.
This isn't.
I also thought of Disney World quite a lot.
Yes.
I enjoyed.
This is a terrible Disney World.
I enjoyed my time at Disney World, but there was something very similar, eerily similar about it to this, where there's this sort of sense of the perfection. It's always beautiful. Everything's happening at exactly the right time. But really, like, you walk around to the other side and, well, okay, there's the garbage can and the bathroom and all of the stuff that's sort of the unpleasant reality of life is it's just hidden from you.
There's a town in kind of North Georgia called Helen. Have you ever?
No. Yeah.
Okay, Helen, Georgia, at some point in the past, I don't know when it was, decided that they were going to be an alpine village.
Okay.
And the main street of Helen, Georgia is all just this kind of German, kind of Bavarian, mountain village architecture with, the timbers and German restaurants and German souvenir shops and all the rest of it. But then if you go in kind of the alley back behind the main street, and you'll see this, guy from North Georgia in lederhosen sneaking a smoke between shifts.
Right.
And you're like, okay, yeah, this is not a real place.
Right, exactly. He really goes.
I love Helen, by the way. It's super fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's a town like that in Washington State, and it's really, I mean, it's perfect for tourists. I mean, you go there and you can, you go to touristy shops and do touristy things, and that's, you can ski and then you can go get like real German chocolate or something like that and pretend you're in Germany.
And I would contrast it with Lindsborg, Kansas, which is super Swedish. But it was actually settled by Swedes.
Right.
The Swedish restaurant is run by actual Swedes.
Right, yeah.
They have a Swedish Lutheran church where when I was living in Kansas, the church, the liturgy in the Lutheran church in Lindsborg was still done in Swedish.
Holy cow. Wow.
Yeah. So the match of beauty and truth. Beauty and truth needs to go together. Right. The things that are truly worthy ought to be as beautiful as they are worthy of being. And there are beautiful, worthy places in Spenser that are contrasted. So I think that's probably, if Elizabeth starts raising her penciled eyebrows at Edmund Spenser, his answer would be, oh, but your court is as grand as it ought to be. Or, flipped around, you're really worth this, aren't you?
Yeah. You
really, truly are virtuous and good and glorious. And this isn't a vain show, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty point. I mean, it's so obviously the Maiden Queen, the throne, the people crowding around. I love how so all of these characters are just he just goes into so much detail describing them. Like she is shining like Una's true beauty. This false queen shines. She is constantly looking in a mirror, and she has a dragon at her feet. We see other women with dragons. Duessa rides a dragon later, but this dragon seems fairly tame. So there's something there about the dragon, but I think we could get sidetracked, and I really want to talk about her advisors. But I love that she claims to be she's actually the daughter of Pluto and Proserpina, but she claims to be the daughter of Jove. And if there were a god higher than Jove, she would claim to be his daughter.
Yeah.
It just needs to go as high as possible. Oh, her name is Lucifera. Clearly Lucifer, just the female version of that, which literally is the bearer of light. But as every English speaker knows, that's what the devil was called.
Yeah.
So, and we're gonna get to the six wizards, the six advisors in a second. But Duessa and Red Cross approach her. There's kind of this Queen of Sheba moment where they just say, "We came to see how great you are," and she, of course, she accepts that.
That works.
And then it's stanza 15. We find out that everyone in the court in the House of Pride already knows Duessa. Like, oh, hey, Duessa. And we pointed out before just how funny it is. All the bad guys know each other in this book.
Like, who's this sap?
Right. Yeah. Oh, this one today. Yeah, they call him by the wrong name. What's the name of the plant guy? Polydorus? The guy who turned into a tree?
Fredubio.
Fredubio. It's like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
Fredubio. No, this isn't that guy. This is a new one. Yeah.
Shut up.
But what I really want to get to is they go for a little ride in the fresh air.
Yeah.
And
It's hilarious.
Lucifera's chariot is drawn by 6 unequal beasts, as
Yeah.
it says. And we get her 6 advisors, which, of course, are the 7 deadly sins. She's pride, and then we get the 6 others. And each of them has a beast to ride upon. They have special clothes. They hold something in their hands or in their teeth. And they have an illness, all of which are selected to match the sin. So this is where it just gets fun, because you could talk about the different characters. So the first guy is idleness or sloth. Perfect leader because he keeps falling asleep, and his donkey that he rides just goes back and forth all over the place, and the whole trade is just like the whole
following him.
Yeah, they're just wandering all around without any direction at all. And he is the we have another jab at the Catholic Church here, or at least the monasteries. He's dressed like a monk. He has a prayer book in his hand, but he's too sleepy to read it. His illness is fever. I'm not sure what the significance of that is. If there's
In his listless limbs through evil guise, a shaking fever reigned continually. Is that malaria?
oh maybe well
Because they had malaria.
right, well they just didn't call it that.
Um,
What was the
but when you have those attacks, you're basically you have no energy.
you're fatigued?
Yes.
Right. Anything to say about idleness before we move on to the next guy?
Like to unholy monk. I love this bit. It's he's 2 things. This is an epic catalog that we see in
Homer, like the
Yeah.
catalog of ships, and
Mhm.
yeah,
catalog of ships, or in the Odyssey when you have the catalogs of dead people he
Mhm.
saw.
yeah. And there's also in the Aeneid. In the Aeneid, it's even more so. It's almost Dante-esque with and then I saw these people, and then the Sibyl took me here, and I saw these people.
But it's also a pretty common experience in the Elizabethan court. It's very much like a masque,
Yeah, yes.
which is not quite a play, but the members of the court dress up as characters in a story or as a representative figures, and they just sort of parade around being symbolic.
Is it kind of like a pageant, like
Yeah.
a Christmas pageant?
Yeah, a bit.
Where it's not a play exactly, because you already know all the characters. Maybe they pose, the wise men process on, and then freeze.
It's
Is that what it would have been like? Something like that?
a bit like that? A bit like that. There were some masks that were more complex than others, but it was more of a low stress.
Yeah.
You didn't have all the lines that you would have if it was a play, right? But everybody could participate and look grand.
Interesting. I wonder if we should bring those back.
I don't know.
Here's your role at the party.
What makes me think of what's the movie where British movie And it's set around Christmas time, and all the kids are getting roles in the Christmas play, and one of them is going to be the Christmas lobster.
Is it Love Actually?
That sounds right.
I haven't seen it, but I just heard about this. The lobsters.
Christmas, yeah. This has kind of a everybody gets to be something.
Yeah.
Let's all go out there and dress up. Except this is the Garbage Pail Kids version.
Yeah.
This is the gross Mad Magazine version.
Yeah. So next we have Gluttony. Do you think he's considering the order?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Sloth is first because it's funny to have them all wandering all over the place.
Right.
But like in Dante's Circles of Hell, do you think that there's an order of like the significance of the sin? Whereas obviously pride is the top. That's kind of generally across the board.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll pay attention to that as we go. Gluttony's next. So Sloth apparently is the least serious.
Sloth is the failure to do what you ought to have done.
It's not high-handed sin.
Right. It's not malicious sin. It's simply refusing. You haven't done the thing you ought to do. It's not that you did something else that was malicious or hurtful to someone else.
Yeah.
You just haven't done what you ought to do. So that's kind of the first step. With gluttony is the next, which is the excessive enjoyment of those things which are rightful and necessary pleasures when enjoyed moderately. Right. So we have a violation of moderation. Something like it's not
right. There's nothing wrong with eating. Eating is a good thing.
Yep.
You know.
He's got his boozing can.
I love that. It's koozie.
Yes.
So he rides on a pig.
Mm-hmm.
He's huge and fat, but he has a long, fine neck, like a crane. I do not know how this works, like anatomically, but I think it's a description of the glutton loves to feel food in his throat. And so it takes a long time for him to swallow.
Yeah.
And it goes down his throat, and he just gives him the pleasure of eating as it slides down his long throat.
Well, it looks like a the cartoons where you have a character with a long, thin neck and they swallow something huge,
like
and you just see it go down.
Yeah. Exactly.
Swallow
but
a
he
whole
also
turkey.
is constantly vomiting too.
Yeah.
And also I love, so he's holding, so his thing in his hand is the boozing can. His animal is a pig, but his clothing made me laugh probably more than anyone else. He's wearing nothing but leaves because it's too hot to wear anything else. He's like, his body temperature is so high from all of his intemperate gluttony that he just is sweating all the time.
Oh, who's the guy in Prince Caspian who comes with all of the
Silenus?
So yes, it's Silenus, yeah.
And he has dropsy, which I think is something that you get from overeating. I'm not sure what the modern form of it is, but I don't know. But it's kind of this, and it has one of the symptoms is you're very thirsty all the time, right?
I don't know. I've never had dropsy.
Yes, I've been thirsty, but I never had dropsy. So if we're going in terms of the seriousness of the sin, gluttony, abuse of a good thing. Lechery, also abuse of a good thing. Maybe slightly more serious than gluttony.
The sins of intemperance.
Yeah. Lechery rides on a goat, symbol of lechery. I don't know that goats are more lecherous than other animals, but and also he says this his wally eyes or his wall-eyed goat is the sign of jealousy. So, but I think it's talking about more like the kind of jealousy connected with marriage, because we have a different advisor who represents envy. So he appears rough, black, filthy. He's wearing a green gown over all his filthiness. The thing in his hand is a burning heart, which I don't know if it's actually a burning heart or if it's some, I don't know what it is, like literally a heart on fire. But I also, this whole thing where he's like, all the ladies love him. Yeah. Even though he's so disgusting. And Spenser has this side note. Oh, who does know the bent of women's fantasy?
Yeah. He's basically a satyr.
Because of the goat.
Yeah. And he's also described I mean, the ways that he's described are are satyr like, including the attraction. He's this sort of walking libido.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. His illness is well, he has all these ways of trying to get women to like impress women. He can dance, he can sing, he can tell fortunes, he has read some loving books. A thousand other ways to bait his fleshly hooks. He has got riz, as the kids would say.
Yeah.
But he also has an STD, at least one.
Yeah.
Spenser doesn't even name what the illness is. He just says, the reproachful pain of that foul evil which all men reprove, that rots the marrow and consumes the brain. I don't even know what they would have called it.
I think they knew about syphilis at this point.
Was that what its name was?
I don't know if it was named that yet, but I think they
venereal
knew about
disease, I guess.
Yeah.
So then we get avarice. And why would avarice be worse than the others?
So you see this in Dante too. Avarice is further down than something like lust or even something like anger. Spenser's order is slightly different from Dante's, but I think he's working with some similar kinds of logic. So avarice is focused on wealth, but you can't eat wealth. So there is a greater artifice in this desire. It is a less natural desire. You can see, children want to eat what they want to eat and drink what they want to drink. As soon as you come into sexual maturity and adolescence, it's easy for those urges to become fixations. It's built into you. But you need a society to teach you that money is valuable and worth acquiring.
Yeah, it's like an old man's sin.
Yes.
It's sort of a more mature sin than gluttony in a way.
And it's a mistaking of means for ends.
Yeah. He rides a camel, which I'm assuming is just because there's strong association of Eastern societies with wealth. The famous Oriental splendor, more than Oriental splendor, of Kipling's.
And trade caravans.
Yeah.
On the Silk Road.
Yeah. And he's got iron coffers full of coins. He's carrying coins with him. And his clothing is threadbare. The Scrooge-esque. He's just a miser. He doesn't spend money on anything. And he's tormented by gout, which again is one of those things that you read about in like Charles Dickens, and all the old squires are like, "Oh, my gout is acting up again."
Yeah, or Anglo-Indian colonels in an Agatha Christie novel.
But I don't know what it is. I think it afflicts the feet. That's what they always in foot and hand, a grievous gout. I don't know. I should have probably looked it up, but. Nor do I know what it has to do with greed.
You know what? I'm going to tell you a true thing. I have stopped looking up health problems on Google or Wikipedia because then pictures come up and then you just can't unsee like, no, I did not need to know what that looked like.
Thing. Yeah. So let's not look up gout.
Yeah, let's not. For his, this is stanza 27. Of his wicked pelf, his wealth, his gold, of his wicked pelf, his God he made, okay? And unto hell himself for money sold. So he has sold himself to get money, and he has made money his God. Like that's why avarice is here, why it's worse than lust. It's a kind of idolatry. Not that you can't make your bodily desires in some senses, an idol, but it is an idol in the sense that wealth isn't the thing that it represents. It isn't even really pleasure.
Right. Yeah. 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 You can't. You can't eat it, like you said. There's no. Yeah.
And the fact that his clothes are threadbare are indicating that he isn't using his wealth to overindulge. No. He's just trying to get more of it, and then sitting on it. Swimming in a pool of it like Scrooge McDuck. Yeah. But even that is fun.
Right. And Scrooge, Scrooge McDuck does actually spend his money. Like there's sort of this joke that he's a miser, but he's actually, he does spend it. Anyway, not to get inside. We don't have to go into deep dive.
Yeah, there are adventures had.
Yeah. So just so far to recap, pulling Lucifera's a chariot, or a donkey, a pig, a camel,
and a goat.
So this is These are very unequal yokes. Next is envy, which I've heard. I do not know where I got this from, but I remember reading or hearing somewhere that envy is the one vice that no one would ever boast about. You might boast about your lustful desires. You might boast about your wealth and that you want more money. You might be happy to admit that you have rage, but no one would ever say, they would never brag about their envy, because it is by its nature a lack of something. And so you would never brag that you don't have something that you want and you hate other people for having that. It's just a very twisty little sin. And we see this similar, like we see that described here, that he's all about poison and chewing things. He's got this ravenous wolf. Envy. So does Envy have the toad in his mouth? He does. Envy's chewing on a toad. The poison is running all down his chin. But he's also chewing on his mouth, the side of his mouth too, on the inside.
It's the person biting their lip for anger.
Yeah. He's got a snake in his hand, in the bosom of his girdle. Eyes painted all over his clothes. He even envies Lucifera and his fellow advisors. Like he's looking around going, that guy's boozing can. I wish I really had that.
Wish I had your goat.
Yeah, he hates everything. He hates all good works and virtuous deeds because he doesn't have those things. And everything good he wants to turn to bad. Yeah.
Eke the verse of famous poets' wit, he doth backbite. Like he even doesn't like good poets. Like me.
And he has leprosy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because of its contagion. Is that the significance of the leprosy for him?
It's both self-devouring and dangerously contagious. Yeah. And he all in a kirtle of discolored say he clothed was, painted full of eyes. When we looked at idleness, he's just sort of riding around looking sleepy. You can see that. Similarly, gluttony's, he's got his boozing can and his koozie, riding on his pig, and he's
leaves,
sweating, and you can see what his vice is. Lechery, a little more symbolic, but still more visible.
He hides his. He's got a gown, a green. I'm assuming a dressing gown, but it doesn't say, to hide his black and filthy appearance.
This one, envy is much more internal. So I feel like there's less showing and more symbolizing with him.
The thing he carries with him is secret. He keeps it secretly in his girdle.
Secret snake.
And then lastly, there's wrath. I would have put envy last probably because it seems like you could, that sin could be connected to any other sin, but I would just, let's describe wrath first, and then you can tell me why he's last. Wrath is riding on a lion, which doesn't like to be controlled by him. He's carrying a burning brand, and he's waving it around his head. He also has a dagger. He's got a collar, or I guess that might be what we would more describe as a fever, I guess. Choleric blood has risen. He's got palsy and St. Francis fire, whatever that is. He's got a swelling spleen.
He's got all kinds of stuff.
And he doesn't have any control over his hands. But what I thought was so unusual about wrath is that stanza 34, he will do something horrible and then feel bad about it and then do it again. When the furious fit was overpast, his cruel facts he often would repent. Yet, willful man, he never would forecast how many mischiefs should ensue his heedless hast. So he has no, I guess, desire to change, but he does feel sorry.
He only has hindsight. He never has foresight.
So why do you think he's last?
He is the sixth counselor, but he isn't last in line.
Lucifera.
Well, yeah, Lucifera's last, but also
I forgot.
also they're paired.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So idleness is on his donkey, and by his side rode gluttony. Then
envy and avarice are together.
Like it's by him. So they're listed in sequence, but they're physically I guess all 7 riding in a line.
Yeah. Oh.
In like a rank.
I always assumed it was 2 by 2.
Well, I mean,
It does say next to him.
Yeah, I mean, so idleness,
she's got the reins.
By his side gluttony. Next to him rode lechery.
Yeah, you're right. They're all
by him did ride avarice. Next to him envy.
Him beside.
Him beside wrath.
So they're all in a row, all 6 of them. It's like Ben-Hur's horses, the 4 in a row there. Okay, so she's got quite a wide, lots of reins.
Yes, and after all, upon the wagon beam rode Satan. Here's her charioteer with his whip. Yeah, on ye sins.
I had completely forgotten about that part. I turned the page and go, wait a minute, what? Why is... Like, of all the places to locate Satan himself,
right?
There he is. He's the charioteer.
Yeah. He's like, on Donner, on Blitzen.
Yeah. So weird. Okay, so there they are. So maybe they're not in order of... Well, no, so even if they're side by side, the order still
There's
matters.
a sequential order in the catalog. So I do think that we can make those observations about that. But then they're also being depicted as in an even line, in an even rank. So that both the picture in your mind that he paints with the prepositions, but also the sequence of description
also matters. Yeah.
Like he's able to kind of do both things. These sins are even, but there's also something building here. There's a deeper seriousness building. He's able to do both things, which is kind of cool.
So I mean that's the big peak of the canto. Sans Joy, the third Sans brother, arrives and also wants revenge for his dead brothers. So he challenges Red Cross to a fight. They start arguing. Oh, he sees the shield. Sees Sansvoy's shield. I guess the dwarf has it. That's what I took from this.
Yeah,
the Faerie Champion's page. Yep. So the dwarf's carrying it, and the Sans Joy snatches it away, and they agree to fight the next day, to have a joust. And then on the cover of night, Duessa goes to him and basically says, I've always loved you. I liked your brother, but he's dead, so let's...
So I made an error in the last episode talking about Sans Loy as being lawless, saying that he was going to get corrected for his lawlessness in the next episode or in the next canto. But it's not actually Sans Loy. It's Sans Joy.
We're not done with Sans Loy yet.
No.
He does. There is something that happens to him later.
Yeah, but this is not Sans Loy. This is Sans Joy. But, my bad for getting the brothers Sans mixed.
Well, I'm sure you're not the first one. Yeah, anything to add about... Well, so I don't know if I ever gave you space to explain why Wrath is last in the list. Why is Wrath why do they all build up to Wrath?
So we've been comparing Spenser to Dante. And while it is Inferno... is not precisely laid out according to the 7 deadly sins. This is the 7 deadly sins. In order to see the 7 deadly sins, you have to go to Dante's Purgatorio. But I do think there's some logic here in this representation of the deadly sins that's like Inferno's logic, sort of building, talking about what's going wrong inside the soul. So first is idleness, not doing your duty. And then you have this gradual immoderate desire, first for eating and drinking, then lust, lechery, and then that immoderate desire begins to be attracted not to, the most immediate desires of the body, but also social signifiers, avarice. Right. You want to be rich. Then envy.
Just you want.
You
just want.
We've gotten into we've passed from immoderate desire into malice. Envy desires, avarice desires as well, but envy desires and hates. And so now envy desires and hates. It wishes ill on those who possess what it thinks ought to be is. Yeah. And now we end with wrath. And wrath is... Now that malice has moved to action. It's moved moved to attack.
Yeah, wrath as actually doing stuff.
Abhorred bloodshed, tumultuous strife, unmanly murder, an unthrifty scath, bitter despite with a rancor's rusty knife.
And in stanza 34, his roughened raiment all was stained with blood, which he had spilt, and all to rags rent through unadvised rashness walks in wood. So you're right. He has been acting on his passion and destroying, whereas gluttony doesn't. He doesn't.
He doesn't hurt anyone else.
No, he doesn't hurt other people. But wrath is one who's actually, he's spreading his destruction.
Lechery hurts other people, but not out of malice. He's not trying to hurt them. Right. He's just trying to give himself pleasure.
Anything to add about the end of the canto, Canto 4?
Into Canto 4. So Sansjoy and George, they're going to have their big fight. But before that happens, Fidessa, going as Fidessa here, sneaks off in the night to make it clear to Sansjoy that even though she's arrived at the court of Lucifera with Red Cross Knight, she doesn't have any actual loyalty to Red Cross Knight. She doesn't want to be with him. In fact, she wants to be with Sansjoy, as it says in 65, stanza 65. Ah, dear Sansjoy, next dearest to Sansfoy.
Did you say 65? I don't have a 65.
Is it not 65? Oh, wait, sorry, 45.
Yes.
Yeah. Dear reader, my cantos are numbered with Roman numerals, and sometimes I get... Dear listener. All right. She's like, clearly you need to be the romantic successor to your brother.
Yeah, right.
And so having made clear to Sansjoy that the stakes of the fight are not just avenge your brother, but also win
for the fair maiden.
Yes. Yeah. He's now doubly motivated to slay St. George.
Right. Okay. I think that might be all. Join us next time. Thank you for listening.